Before we can work on a vehicle, we've got the refrigerant that's in the system. You don't want to let that refrigerant out in the atmosphere, so it needs to be recovered. What you can do is check in your area and see who does AC repairs, and chances are they'll have a recovery station, and for a small fee, they can go ahead and recover the refrigerant from you. Once it's out of there, we can go ahead and service the system. Now that the system is empty, we're ready to remove the compressor and the other components. We'll replace them all at the same time. Before you get started though, turn off the engine and disconnect the negative battery cable from the battery. The next thing we're going to remove is the belt. Make note of how the belt runs around the pulleys. Inspect the belt for signs of glazing, cracking, or missing chunks. If you see any of these signs, you should replace the belt. Now we're going to remove the bolt that holds the manifold and hoses to the compressor. Now we'll remove the compressor mounting bolts. Lift the compressor out of the bracket and set it aside. Be careful not to damage any switches that may be on the back of the unit. You may need to reuse those. Next, we're going to remove the accumulator. Remember, anytime you replace the compressor, you need to replace this component. First, remove the connection from the pressure switch. Loosen and then remove the hose fittings. Set the accumulator aside for comparison to the new unit. Next, we're going to remove all the hoses for careful inspection. We also want to replace all the O-rings while the system is open, so these fittings have to come off anyway. Okay, here's what I've got. This is the outlet tube of the condenser. This is actually where the orifice tube is right here. So this is where it changes from a high side to a low side. So it's going to be hot on this end and cold up here. What's happened after a period of time of being hot and cold and hot and cold, we've got aluminum threads on the fitting to the outlet tube of the condenser going into a steel nut for our liquid line. I'll tell you what, it feels like when I try to loosen this up, the threads are getting tight. So if I go any farther with this, there's a good chance those threads are going to strip, and if they do, I'm going to have to replace the condenser. But at this point, this has to come apart. Let's go ahead and take it apart. Yeah, and there you go. You can tell by looking at the threads, about 5 of the threads here at the end of the fitting, they're stripped. And there's our liquid line. Well, we're going to go ahead and replace the condenser too. Okay, this is the orifice tube that was in our old condenser. I wanted to show this to you, and I also wanted to check it. I'll tell you what I'm looking for. On this screen for the orifice tube, I'm looking for debris. Now, if you see that there's a little bit of debris on this screen, that stops from going into the brass orifice tube. This is an indication of how contaminated the system is because all of the debris is going to wind up on the screen. In our case here, we have a little bit of metal particles here. That's from the compressor, 150,000 miles, that's to be expected. Well, the good thing is we're going to replace the compressor anyway, and our new condenser already has a new orifice tube in it. But I want to show you something. Now, this is another orifice tube out of another vehicle. Now, if you look at this, a lot of the debris has already fell off this, but we've got a accumulation right here at the bottom. You can see there's a lot of particles there. That's a catastrophic compressor failure is what that is. Now, the only problem is you cannot flush this debris out of a parallel style condenser. So what you want to do is call the folks at AutoZone, have them check and see if you have that style condenser. If you do, you're going to have to replace the condenser if you have this. Tell you what, the next thing we want to do now is go ahead and flush the evaporator. As with any job, to do it right, you'll need the right tools. The nice thing is that jobs we'll be covering today don't require a large, expensive assortment. In case where a specialty tool is required, be sure to check with AutoZone's Loan a Tool program. They have many specialty tools that can help you complete your job a lot quicker and easier. The very first thing you almost have to have in order to properly diagnose the system is a gauge set. You will also need your basic hand tools, a socket set, screwdrivers, an assortment of pliers. Snap ring pliers and a flashlight should be sufficient. If you have a noise you're trying to find, a good stethoscope can be a handy tool to have. And a vent thermometer is useful if you want to get an accurate reading of the AC temperature. You'll also need to get an air compressor to properly flush the system. If you don't have a compressor, you should pay a shop to flush the system for you. It's a step you don't want to skip.
Be cautious when working under the hood. If the engine has been running, components will be extremely hot, so be careful what you touch. When working around a running engine, it is important to be alert and never wear loose clothing or a necktie that can get tangled in belts, pulleys, or the fan.
Be cautious when working with refrigerant. If refrigerant is discharged from a can, a hose, or component, it is very cold and can cause skin injury. Never try to add refrigerant to the high side of the system. If you have to lift the vehicle,
never work under it until it has been secured with wheel blocks and securely positioned on jack stands. A hydraulic jack alone is never enough. Be cautious when working with oils and chemicals. Many are damaging to the groundwater environment and toxic to people and animals. Never drain or pour chemicals into the ground or sewer systems. Local municipalities and counties offer resources for proper disposal. And always remember to wear your safety glasses.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
get the entire DVD for this repair and all other procedures covered in the Complete Car Care series at your local AutoZone store.